And welcome back to Masterclass Mondays. My name is Chuck Wagner. Welcome to my channel, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. That really helps us out. Today, we're going to focus on just a bit of my masterclass that I call Game of the Woods. Now, I call it that because there once was a show called Game of Thrones that was very, very popular. And so what I tried to do for the purposes of class discussion is to couch each of the characters in their own houses, much like the families on the show. My house motto is dreams do come true, and I truly believe that that has been my life's philosophy for the longest time. And so the purpose of these videos is to give you just enough of a taste of these classes to hopefully, when the pandemic passes, that you can bring me into your schools and your theaters to work with your casts as you stage new and exciting productions of Into the Woods. The show, of course, is based on James Lapine and Stephen Sondheim's classic Broadway musical, of which I was lucky to be part of the original cast. I played the original Rapunzel's prince, and for the national tour I played the wolf and Cinderella's prince. Now, for the purposes of this class, we're going to talk about the song No One Is Alone, and after we go through basic concepts of what the class is about, we'll talk about the lyrics and what it means. And at the end, as always, there'll be a little behind-the-scenes secret, so stick around to the end, and I'll give you a little behind-the-scenes magic. Now, the first of the houses, of course, starts the play. He is the narrator, and in an homage to Sunny in the Park with George, I made his field white, a blank page, because telling the story can go any direction that he chooses, so he has a lot of power. It was played originally by Tom Aldridge, the brilliant, brilliant actor. I also had a chance to work with Dick Cavett, the great talk show host. And the day that I went on for the very first time as Cinderella's prince, he was narrating, and he took a fantastic portrait of me. That is one of my favorite pictures from my experience in Into the Woods. So the narrator means a lot to me, and his house is the house Mysterious, which is also related to the baker and his wife later on. Here's a picture of the old man from the illustrated children's book, which is also quite spectacular, and there's old Tom looking curmudgeon-y as ever. Here's the father from the movie, who, bless his heart, had nothing to do. That brings us to the next big house, the house witch. I made her house motto, Children Will Listen. Of course, the witch was played by the beautiful Bernadette Peters. Here she is when she regained her youth and her beauty. Here she is as she's doing her best Margaret Hamilton escape. And then on the national tour, which I also had the honor of being in, Cleo Lane played the witch and brought a real sense of maturity and wisdom and her smoky jazz voice to the role. Pretty fantastic. And that brings us to the house of the baker, which is the classic married couple. And they're the through line that ties the whole show together. Here they are, Chip and Joanna, spectacular. Now for Cinderella, the house Ella, because she's always talking with the birds, I made her house motto, be good. Be nice, because that's what's her mantra given to her by her mother. Here she is, played by the inimitable Kim Crosby. And Kim and Bob Westenberg, who played Cinderella's prince, got along so famously well that now they've been married for nearly 35 years now. And happily ever after certainly does come in the real world sometimes. Here I am with Jill Geddes, who was on the road with me as Cinderella, spectacularly fun. And also in the house Ella, I've also included the Cinderella's father and the steward. Also in house Ella, I've included the stepsisters, the evil stepmother. For house Red, I made her motto, follow the path and never stray. That would seem to be what her grandmother tried to teach her. Tracy Katz was my Red on the road. What a talent she is, and so funny. And of course, for the wolf, hello little girl. We'll talk about the wolf in a whole nother video. For Jack, I made his Giants in the Sky because that's his big song. Here he is with Barbara Bryn playing with Milky White. For the House Royal, our motto with the heart to get, the better to have, pretty self-explanatory, and we sing it over and over again in our songs, Agony. And of course, for Rapunzel, that's her motto. Pam Winslow was Rapunzel, and we are still great friends. And as you can see from the children's book, the visit that the prince has is quite the visit, which explains why later on they have the twins. for the house giant. So I gave him the classic Fee Fi Fo Fum. Here's a little look at my sketchbook, which I'll talk a bit about at the end. Before we wrap up with our secret, I'll tell you a little bit about my method with this sketchbook. Here's our poster from the national tour. It says we're Broadway's best musical, and I like to think that we're still among the best. Here's the national tour cast as we were setting out on the road. Here we are at the Amazon Theater. A little peek backstage with my own prince and princess from the tour. That's my son Stuart on the horse. Susan, looking beautiful as ever. As we discuss the song No One Is Alone, how better than with a few words from the master himself.
No One Is Alone is a quartet for the four survivors. Two older, meaning the baker and Cinderella, because Cinderella, though she isn't physically that much older than she was in the first act, has changed from a girl to a woman. And she becomes responsible in the second act as a woman for a girl, namely Little Red Riding Hood. And the baker becomes responsible for Jack. So in a way, this is a parent-child song and should be thought of that way. It's as if the two parents were telling the children a fairy tale. And in fact, at one point, Jim and I toyed with them saying to the kids, once upon a time, at the end of the song. The other thing is that, of course, this is where the Bean theme finally becomes calm. It's neither sinister anymore, nor is it agitated. It is, though it's in the accompaniment only, you hear it suddenly as... And it's at its most simple, harmonically, and at its most legato, because the story, in a sense, is about the Bean theme, and how all the beans which caused all this mischief have finally come to fruition here. And also, I would like to point out that when you're singing the release of the second part, when they're all singing together, people make mistakes. It's going like this. And that, of course, is the inversion of the Bean theme. It's the upside-down version of... So that everything finally comes together in one song.
I hope you enjoyed that little clip from some of the MTI International materials you can get from behind the scene. It's a real joy to see a bit of Stephen from that time period. It was a real honor to work with him, and I feel blessed to have been at a party at his house. He's got the most amazing collection of antique games. The guy is a genius, and a real treat to share the space with him. Now, I think possibly the most relevant thing about the song is that in the face of this destruction from the giant, or whatever the giant destructive forces that the community is dealing with, it addresses the fact that even though we are doing the best we can to face our own problems, that maybe if we take a broader perspective, we can see that the other side has a point too, right? That witches can be right, giants can be good, but you decide what's right, you decide what's good. But you must remember that they have a point, we have a point, and if we respect that point, perhaps we can come together and work as a community. Now, there'll always be destructive forces that we may or may not be able to deal with, but as long as we come together and face it with respect and gratitude, then we can survive. I think that this show is full of life lessons, and particularly this song. And of course, following the story of the fairy tales, to see the core family, that all of them would come from dysfunctional backgrounds. Jack, whose father had abandoned him, whose mother's kind of gone loopy. You've got Red Riding Hood, who we may or may not have any kind of awareness of her parents, but dysfunctional grandma relationships. You got the baker, who has lost his wife but was struggling to have a family, and Cinderella, who comes from another dysfunctional family. They all come together and form the core of the new, enlightened, if you would pardon the phrase, woke family, and move forward together. So it's perennially relevant and beautiful song. Well, thank you for listening. Certainly leave your questions and comments down below. There's a lot more to discuss, and certainly we could go much deeper into this song. I just want to plant the seed, trying to stimulate the conversation. So leave questions and comments below. Certainly your assignment is to read the lyrics, to explore them, and if you have opinions, I'm curious to hear them. Now, one of the reasons that I'm doing this teaching and I've been doing it for, hard to imagine, over 20 years now, sharing master classes and exploring some of these shows. But it's because I am a perennial student. I don't really so much teach as bring the idea of the class going forward, and I'm always evolving. And one of the things that I talked about earlier in the video is my sketchbook. Now, as I'm preparing characters, I do work. I'll put my scripts down in the book. As I showed you earlier, I have quite an elaborate Into the Woods study that is just an elaborate doodle, but it really helped me to kind of come to terms with what I was doing. And there's real magic, I believe, in putting that art to the paper, whether it's the words to help you learn the scripts or just trying to imagine, what it is that you're trying to achieve. So I encourage you to draw things, make certain, like for example, back in the day when I was on General Hospital, that was kind of my metaphysical experience for my spiritual character that really, I think the power I invested in that character led to Automan years later on ABC. So you never know where the magic's going to take you, but there's magic in that creative action. And so I encourage you to keep being a student and do try to explore your creative side, whether it's drawing, painting, building, sculpture, or even just creating YouTube videos. Use your creative force. And that's my mantra for the day. Now, my special behind-the-scene moment took place on the stage of the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, California, when Kay McClellan, who went on to be one of the evil stepsisters, originally played the role of Rapunzel. And just before the end of Act 1, as we're getting ready, and the Rapunzel prince stumbles on blind and runs into Rapunzel with the babies, she cries in my eyes, I get my eyes back, and we turn to go. But unfortunately, because the stagecraft was a little more primitive at the Old Globe, they had already, sadly, unlatched the trap door in the floor of the stage to prep for the beanstalk's growth at the end of Act 1. So we turned to go, and all of a sudden, Rapunzel is beside me, and then she starts to not be beside me and starts falling through the pit. And fortunately, I was able to catch her. And while she bruised her thighs pretty terribly, in that moment, because we were in fact united, tragedy was averted. That was a thrilling and somewhat disturbing behind-the-scene moment, but that's our little backstage secret for today. So thank you for visiting. We have many more to come. I've got Javert from Les Mis to pursue. I've got Dracula and Van Helsing, both sides of that I have played. We've got more of Into the Woods. We're going to discuss Agony. I'll do certainly a whole one on what it was like to play the wolf. There'll be more Automan questions and answers as we come along, so please stay tuned. And I invite you again to subscribe if you have not, like if you can, and just visit, because it's a chance for us to connect, and I really, really am enjoying this. So thank you for visiting. Thanks for coming to Masterclass Monday, and I'll see you again next week.